My name is Beulah Matthews, and at 28, I never expected to go from an elementary school art teacher to the heir of $39 million overnight. When my grandparents died in that terrible plane crash, I was devastated. They raised me, loved me, and never once mentioned their fortune. The day my estranged family discovered I was the sole heir, everything changed. Their fake smiles turned to threats, but they never expected what happened when they stormed the villa that day. If you could see their faces when they realized who was standing beside me, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I faced down the family who tried to steal everything from me. Before $39 million changed everything, I lived a simple life in Portland. My tiny one-bedroom apartment was just 15 minutes from Riverside Elementary, where I taught art to 3rd and 4th graders. My beat-up Honda Civic had over 150,000 miles on it, and my biggest splurge was buying premium art supplies for my classroom when the school budget fell short. Every weekend I would drive to my grandparents' house in the suburbs. Harold and Elaine Matthews had raised me since I was 7 years old after my parents James and Patricia simply disappeared one day. They left a note saying they needed to find themselves and never came back. Later we would learn they had gambling debts and substance abuse problems. But as a child, all I knew was that Grandma and Grandpa were now my world. Their house was modest, a 3-bedroom ranch-style home with a beautiful garden that Grandma Elaine tended with love. Grandpa Harold always greeted me with fresh cookies and milk. A tradition from my childhood he never abandoned even when I reached adulthood. They were retired teachers themselves, so they understood my passion for education despite the financial struggles. Every Sunday we would have dinner together with Grandpa telling stories about his days teaching history and Grandma showing me her latest watercolor paintings. They encouraged my art, funded my education, and taught me that wealth came from relationships, not bank accounts. Never once did they hint at having anything beyond their teacher pensions. My student loans weighed on me around $50,000 that seemed impossible to pay off on a teacher salary. When I mentioned my struggles, my grandparents would offer small amounts to help, but always said they were on a fixed income too. I never doubted this, seeing their careful budgeting and modest lifestyle. My best friend Monica Williams had been by my side since college. As a nurse at Portland General, she understood financial struggles too. We would meet for coffee at Riverside Cafe every Wednesday, sharing our week and supporting each other through life challenges. Monica was the sister I never had, the one person outside my grandparents who truly knew me. The rest of my family had become strangers. Aunt Eleanor, my father James' sister, had cut ties with my grandparents shortly after they took me in. She claimed they favored my father and now me, though I could never understand what favoritism she meant. Uncle Franklin, my other paternal uncle, maintained superficial holiday card contact but never visited. My cousins Cassandra and Tyler Eleanor children were strangers. I had met only at rare family events, always looking at me with undisguised resentment. The last time I saw my grandparents alive was 2 days before their anniversary trip to Hawaii. Grandma Elaine had been excited about their first real vacation in years. They had saved for it, planning each detail with the precision of people unaccustomed to luxury. We sat in their sunroom drinking tea as golden hour light streamed through the windows. Grandpa Harold had squeezed my hand and said something that would later haunt me. "What you see is not always the whole picture, Beulah. Remember that people can surprise you in ways you never imagined." I thought he was just being philosophical, as he often was. I hugged them goodbye, promised to water grandma plants, and told them I would pick them up from the airport in 10 days. The phone call came 3 days later. Their small charter plane had crashed during an island hopping tour. No survivors. The Coast Guard had recovered their bodies. I collapsed on my kitchen floor, the phone still in my hand, unable to breathe or cry or scream. Monica found me there hours later when I missed our coffee date, still in the same position, in shock. I never imagined that their death would not only take away the only real parents I had known, but would also reveal secrets that would turn my world upside down and make my own family turn against me. The funeral was held at Riverside Memorial Chapel, a modest venue that I thought would have suited my grandparents' simple tastes. I was shocked when faces I barely recognized began filing into the chapel. Aunt Eleanor arrived in a black designer dress. her face appropriately solemn but her eyes scanning the room as if appraising its value. Uncle Franklin brought his wife Brenda, both dressed impeccably and whispering to each other while glancing my way. My cousins Cassandra and Tyler stood awkwardly by the guest book, signing with flourishes and adjusting their expensive watches. Where had they all been during holidays, birthdays, and hospital stays? Their sudden appearance felt vulture, like circling what remained of my grandparents' lives. After the service, Aunt Eleanor approached me, her perfume overwhelming as she air-kissed near my cheek. "Such a tragedy, darling. Your grandparents were wonderful people. I always meant to visit more." She paused, her hand on my arm. "Have you spoken to their lawyer yet? About the will and arrangements?" Uncle Franklin was less subtle. "So sorry, Beulah. Terrible business." He cleared his throat. "I suppose Samuel Blackwood is handling their estate? Small as it might be, families should really stick together when dividing such sentimental items." I was confused. My grandparents had never mentioned a lawyer named Samuel Blackwood. When I said as much, my relatives exchanged glances I could not interpret. The mystery was solved the next morning when I received a call from a deep professional voice. "Miss Matthews, this is Samuel Blackwood of Blackwood and Associates. I was your grandparents' attorney. We need to meet regarding their estate. Can you come to my office tomorrow at 10? The law offices of Blackwood and Associates occupied the top floor of the tallest building in downtown Portland. The reception area gleamed with marble and mahogany, and the panoramic views of the city made me feel small and out of place in my department store dress and scuffed boots. Samuel Blackwood was a tall, distinguished man in his 60s, with silver hair and piercing blue eyes that assessed me carefully. "Miss Matthews," he said, gesturing to a chair across from his massive desk. "Thank you for coming. I have been the Matthews family attorney for 30 years, though your grandparents may not have mentioned me. I expected a brief meeting about a modest will, perhaps leaving me their house and small savings. What came next changed everything. Your grandparents, Harold and Elaine Matthews, have left you as the sole beneficiary of their estate valued at approximately $39 million. Mr. Blackwood stated, his tone matter of fact, as if discussing the weather. I laughed. It had to be a joke. My grandparents were retired teachers who clipped coupons and drove a 10-year-old sedan. Mr. Blackwood did not smile. Your grandfather was not merely a history teacher, Miss Matthews. That was his passion, yes, but it was not his primary source of income. Harold Matthews was the silent owner of Matthews Property Holdings, with commercial real estate across 3 states. Your grandmother managed their investment portfolio, which has performed exceptionally well. They maintained a modest lifestyle by choice, not necessity. He slid a folder across the desk. The estate includes 12 commercial properties currently leased to stable businesses, a stock and bond portfolio worth approximately $20 million, a villa in Lake Oswego that they purchased 5 years ago but never occupied, several luxury vehicles stored in a private garage, and liquid assets of about $4 million in various accounts. My hands trembled as I opened the folder. Property deeds, bank statements, and investment reports swam before my eyes. Photos of a stunning lakeside villa that could have been in a magazine. Documentation of a life my grandparents had completely hidden from me. "Why would they keep this from me?" I whispered. Mr. Blackwood's expression softened slightly. Your grandparents were private people. They came from humble beginnings and built their wealth quietly over decades. They were concerned that knowledge of their fortune might change how you developed as a person. They wanted you to value education, hard work, and compassion above material wealth. The reading of the will was scheduled for the following day. I was still in shock when I arrived to find my relatives already seated in the conference room, faces expectant. Mr. Blackwood read the formal legal document, which stated in clear terms that I, Beulah Matthews, was to inherit the entirety of Harold and Elaine Matthews' estate, with no provisions for any other family members. I could feel the temperature in the room drop as the words sole heir and entirety of the estate echoed in the silence. Aunt Eleanor's face tightened, her knuckles white around her designer handbag. Uncle Franklin's jaw worked back and forth, a vein pulsing in his forehead. Cassandra stared at me with naked hatred while Tyler looked away, his face flushed. There must be some mistake, Aunt Eleanor's voice cut through the silence. Harold was my brother. Surely he would not leave his own sister with nothing. Mr. Blackwood was unflappable. The will is legally binding and was updated just last year. Your brother was of sound mind and made his wishes explicitly clear. What about James' rights? Uncle Franklin demanded, referring to my absent father. His son should have a share that would come to us in his absence. Your brother James legally forfeited any inheritance rights when he signed over custody of Beulah to your parents and then disappeared. Mr. Blackwood replied, "This was all addressed years ago." As the meeting devolved into angry protests and thinly veiled threats of contesting the will, Mr. Blackwood calmly informed everyone that the will was ironclad with multiple witnesses and medical documentation of my grandparents' mental competence. After my relatives stormed out, he explained to me the process of transferring assets and suggested I consider financial advisors and security measures given the significant change in my circumstances. That night I called Monica, still unable to process everything. She rushed over with a bottle of wine and listened as I poured out the incredible story. "Holy crap, Beulah," she said when I finished. "You are literally a millionaire now. Actually a multimillionaire." I stared at my shabby apartment ceiling. I still cannot believe they kept this from me. All those years I was struggling with student loans, eating ramen, worrying about rent. They had millions. Why? Monica considered this. Maybe they wanted to protect you. Money changes people and how they treat you. They probably wanted you to have a normal life, make real friends like me who liked you for you, not your bank account. Her words made sense, but I still felt a confusing mix of emotions. Grief for my grandparents, shock at their secret, and growing anxiety about my relatives, obvious anger. As I tried to sleep that night in the same apartment that now seemed absurdly modest given my new net worth, I had no idea that the inheritance was about to make my family show their true colors in ways I could never have imagined. The calls began at 7:30 the next morning. Aunt Eleanor's voice dripped with forced sweetness. "Beulah, darling, I think we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. This news has been a shock to everyone. Perhaps we could meet for lunch to discuss how to move forward as a family." Before I could respond, my phone beeped with another call, Uncle Franklin. His approach was less subtle. "Beulah, this situation is unfair to the entire family. Your father would have received a third of everything which rightfully should come to me as his brother. We need to arrange a fair division." By noon, I had 17 missed calls and dozens of text messages. Cousin Cassandra suggested meeting for coffee to catch up on old times. Cousin Tyler sent an awkward message about a business opportunity he wanted to discuss. Aunt Eleanor's husband Richard, whom I had met perhaps twice in my life, called to reminisce about supposed fond memories with my grandparents. The pattern was clear. Suddenly, I was the most popular Matthews family member. The unexpected visits began that afternoon. I opened my apartment door to find Aunt Eleanor standing there dressed impeccably and holding a gift basket. "Beulah, sweetheart, I was in the neighborhood and thought I would drop by." She pushed past me into my apartment, her eyes widening slightly at the modest furnishings. "We have so much to catch up on." For the next hour, she alternated between reminiscing about my grandparents, dropping hints about her financial difficulties, and making comments about family loyalty. When none of that seemed to work, she changed tactics. "You know your father would have wanted his family taken care of. James always said family comes first, despite his problems. I had been 7 when my father left. My memories of him were vague at best, painful at worst." "What do you know about my father?" I asked. Aunt Eleanor's expression shifted, becoming calculated. "James had his troubles, but he was my brother." "Did you know he has been living in Arizona these past 10 years? Trying to get clean, get his life together? He would want you to share this windfall with his siblings." This was the first I had heard of my father's whereabouts. Why had she never mentioned this before? Why had no one told me? The real reason became clear as she continued. "Your father borrowed money from Franklin and me over the years. Substantial amounts. We supported him when your grandparents cut him off. In a way, you owe us. The manipulation was so transparent it was almost laughable. "Where were you when I was growing up?" I asked quietly. "When I graduated. When I needed family. In mere people agay surely ever 60. She bristled. "We respected Harold and Elaine wishes to raise you. They made it clear they wanted limited contact." I knew this was a lie. My grandparents had told me they tried for years to keep the family connected, sending invitations that were ignored or declined. After Aunt Eleanor finally left, Uncle Franklin arrived less than an hour later, not bothering with pretenses. He paced my small living room, gesturing emphatically. "This is highway robbery, Beulah. My brother worked for that real estate company in the early days. He helped build the business before his issues. That money should be partially mine." His face reddened as he spoke, spittle flying from his lips. "You need to do the right thing here." When I did not immediately agree, his tone darkened. "You have no idea what you are getting into. Managing that much money, those properties, you will fail spectacularly without family support. We could contest the will, claim Harold was not of sound mind." After he stormed out, I called Mr. Blackwood, who reassured me the will was uncontestable but suggested I consider additional security measures given the family hostility. That evening my cousins arrived together, their approach more subtle but equally transparent. Cassandra, sleek and polished in designer clothes, embraced me as if we were lifelong friends instead of virtual strangers. "Beulah, we have missed you," she exclaimed. "We should never have lost touch. This inheritance is such a blessing, but money can be such a burden too. I work in finance, you know. I could help you manage everything." Tyler, fidgeting with his expensive watch, added, "And I have been looking to get into real estate development. Those commercial properties would be perfect for my first project. We could partner up, keep it in the family." Their transparent attempts to access my inheritance might have been amusing if they were not so persistent. When gentle manipulation failed to work, they too changed tactics. Cassandra leaned forward, her voice lowering. "Do you know why your parents really left Beulah? Your father stole from Grandpa business. Grandma and Grandpa covered it up, but he took nearly $500,000. That money would have been part of our inheritance too." Tyler nodded. "Mom and Dad struggled while your grandparents poured everything into you. College art lessons, that semester abroad in Italy. They treated you like the golden grandchild while ignoring the rest of us." I was stunned. My grandparents had funded my education, yes, but I had worked through college, taken out loans. The semester in Italy had been on scholarship. Were they inventing grievances to justify their entitlement? After they left, I found a small envelope that had been slipped under my door. Inside were photos of my apartment building, with red X marks drawn over my windows and a note. "Money goes fast when accidents happen." That night, I returned from dinner with Monica to find my car vandalized, deep scratches along both sides, and the word "thief" spray painted on the hood. The officer who took my report seemed unconcerned, suggesting it was probably random teenagers. The next morning, I woke to find my email flooded with subscription confirmations for everything from porn sites to extremist political newsletters, all using my personal information. My phone rang constantly with calls from unknown numbers. The harassment was escalating rapidly. When my apartment door was found with a large red X painted across it, Monica insisted I could not stay there any longer. I called Mr. Blackwood, who agreed the situation was becoming dangerous. "I think it is time you moved into your grandparents' villa," he suggested. "It has a security system and is in a gated community. We can arrange for additional protection there." The idea of leaving my apartment felt like giving in to the pressure, but Monica was adamant. "These people are showing you exactly who they are," she said. "They care more about money than your safety or well-being. You need to protect yourself." That afternoon, as I packed essential items, I received a text from an unknown number. "We know where you are moving. You cannot hide from family." With growing anxiety and a sense of being hunted by my own relatives, I realized that my grandparents' fortune was quickly becoming a curse. What should have been a time to grieve their loss had transformed into a fight for my safety and rightful inheritance. The family I barely knew was revealing their true nature, and it was uglier than I could have imagined. The Lake Oswego villa was stunning, a modern 5-bedroom masterpiece of glass and stone nestled on the lakeshore. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic water views, and the soaring ceilings made the space feel like a luxury resort rather than a home. I wandered through rooms filled with elegant furniture that had never been used, tags still attached to some pieces. According to Mr. Blackwood, my grandparents had purchased the property as an investment 5 years ago but continued living in their modest home out of habit and privacy concerns. They had planned to eventually tell me about their wealth and offer me the villa. But the crash had come before they could share their secret. As beautiful as it was, the villa felt hollow without them. I found myself sitting on the expansive lakeside deck, watching sunlight dance across the water, wondering why they had kept me in the dark for so long. On my second day there, I discovered a home office hidden behind a bookcase in the library, a secret room my grandparents had created. Inside were filing cabinets filled with documents, photo albums, and personal journals. As I began exploring these records, the true history of my family began to emerge. Letters from Aunt Eleanor dating back 20 years revealed repeated requests for money, always accompanied by guilt trips about family obligation. My grandparents had helped her numerous times, paying for Cassandra college and covering Tyler gambling debts, only to be met with more demands. Documents showed that Uncle Franklin had been employed by my grandfather's real estate company, but was fired for embezzlement. Rather than press charges, my grandfather had paid him a settlement to leave quietly, protecting the family name. Most shocking were the records related to my parents. My father, James, had indeed stolen from the company, but the amount was closer to $2 million, not the $500,000 Cassandra had claimed. Bank transfers showed my grandparents had continued supporting him financially, even after he abandoned me, sending money to various rehabilitation facilities over the years. As I processed these revelations, a gentle knock at the door startled me. A small, silver-haired woman stood there, her kind eyes widening at the sight of me. "Miss Beulah, is that really you? The resemblance to your grandmother is remarkable." She introduced herself as Grace Peterson, my grandparents' housekeeper of 30 years. She had maintained both properties and had her own key to the villa. "I was just coming to check on things as I do every week," she explained. "Samuel told me you might be here." She hesitated. "Your grandparents spoke of you constantly. They were so proud." Over tea on the deck, Grace shared stories that painted a fuller picture of my family history. "Eleanor and Franklin had been jealous of my father from childhood," she explained. "When your grandfather's business took off, that jealousy turned toxic. They felt entitled to his success despite contributing nothing to it." She described how my grandparents had tried to include the whole family in holidays and celebrations for years, only to be met with demands and ingratitude. They had finally established boundaries after my cousins had vandalized their home during a Thanksgiving gathering, stealing jewelry and blaming it on my father. "The most valuable thing," Grace shared, was context for their secrecy. "They wanted you to have a normal childhood, not one burdened by wealth or family discord," she explained. "They planned to bring you into their financial world when you turned 30, to let you establish your own identity first." The crash changed everything. As Grace was leaving, she paused. "Be careful, Miss Beulah. Your aunt and uncle have been asking around about this property for years. They were furious when they learned your grandparents had purchased it. Now that they know it is yours." She did not finish the sentence, but her meaning was clear. The next day, my peaceful breakfast was interrupted by my phone exploding with notifications. My relatives had taken their campaign public. Aunt Eleanor had posted a lengthy Facebook screed about greedy heirs and elder manipulation. Uncle Franklin had gone further, giving an interview to a local newspaper columnist about a family inheritance dispute involving a manipulative granddaughter who had poisoned her grandparents against their own children. Though they did not name me directly, anyone who knew the family could identify who they meant. By afternoon, I had received concerned texts from former colleagues and college friends asking if I was the Matthews heir mentioned in the growing social media storm. When I went into town for groceries, I noticed people staring, whispering behind their hands. At the checkout, the cashier glanced at my credit card and then back at me, her expression changing from friendly to coolly professional. That evening, I arranged to meet Monica at a quiet restaurant in Portland, needing the comfort of the one person I still trusted. We had just ordered when Aunt Eleanor and Uncle Franklin walked in with several people I did not recognize. Their eyes locked on me immediately, and they made their way to our table. Well, if it is not our millionaire niece, Aunt Eleanor announced loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. Enjoying spending your ill-gotten gains. I tried to keep my voice low. This is not the place to discuss family matters. Please, respect my privacy. Uncle Franklin scoffed. Privacy, like how you privately manipulated your grandparents into cutting out the rest of the family. His voice carried through the restaurant heads turning toward our table. A woman with them who introduced herself as their attorney, Judith Sterling, placed a document on the table. We are formally contesting the will on grounds of undue influence and mental incapacity, she stated. We have witnesses who will testify that Harold Matthews was showing signs of dementia in his final years. This was an outright lie. My grandfather had been sharp until the end, discussing current events and beating me at chess just days before the crash. As they created a scene, restaurant patrons openly stared. Monica stood up, placing herself between me and my relatives. This is harassment, she said firmly. Leave now, or management will call the police. Aunt Eleanor sneered. Buying friends too, Beulah, how pathetic. As they finally left, the damage was done. Whispers followed us as we paid our bill and hurried out. By the time we reached the villa, social media was buzzing with distorted accounts of the restaurant confrontation. The next morning, I discovered that someone had created a fake profile in my name, posting offensive content and boasts about manipulating elderly relatives. My school principal called concerned about the controversy affecting the school reputation. Though he did not directly ask me to resign, his meaning was clear: this could impact my job. After consulting with Mr. Blackwood, I decided to take a leave of absence from teaching until the situation resolved. It was becoming clear that my relatives would stop at nothing to discredit me and pressure me into giving them money. Based on the escalating threats, Mr. Blackwood recommended hiring professional security. Alexander Reeves, a former military officer who now ran a private security firm, arrived that afternoon to assess the property. Your location is fairly secure due to the gated community, but there are vulnerabilities, he explained, pointing out areas of concern. We will install additional cameras, motion sensors, and have personnel on site. While Alexander's team worked, I continued exploring my grandparents' records. In a locked drawer of my grandmother's desk, I found her personal journal. The entries from the past few years revealed how much they had wanted to share their wealth with me, but feared it would change our relationship. More disturbing were entries describing attempts by Eleanor and Franklin to have them declared incompetent. 2 years earlier, they had arranged for a doctor friend to evaluate my grandfather under false pretenses. When the doctor found him perfectly competent, they had tried to pressure my grandmother into signing over control of certain assets, claiming it would protect them from taxes. The journal entry from 3 months before the crash chilled me. Eleanor threatened today that if we do not change our will, she will find ways to ensure Beulah never enjoys our legacy. I fear what they might do, but Harold and I agree we cannot give in to such threats. Beulah is our true family. She has the heart to use our blessing wisely. That night alone in the vast villa, despite the security team patrolling outside, I broke down. Curled on my grandparents' unused bed, I sobbed for the grandparents I had lost, the family I never truly had, and the simple life that had been shattered by wealth and greed. Monica found me there when she came to check on me, bringing dinner and much-needed emotional support. After hearing about the journal and the escalating situation, she stayed the night, refusing to leave me alone. What hurts most, I told her as we sat on the deck watching moonlight on the lake, is not their greed. It is that they are willing to destroy my reputation, my career, my sense of safety, all for money they did not earn and do not deserve. Monica squeezed my hand. Then do not let them win. Your grandparents chose you for a reason. Honor that choice by standing your ground. Her words strengthened my resolve. My grandparents had protected me all my life. Now it was my turn to protect their legacy, even against my own blood relatives. The warning came from an unexpected source. A week after moving into the villa, I received a call from an unknown number. Is this Beulah Matthews? A deep male voice asked. My name is Thomas Reynolds. I was your father, former business partner. We need to talk about your family situation. It is not safe to discuss over the phone. Suspicious, but curious. I agreed to meet him in a public cafe in downtown Portland, bringing Alexander from the security team with me. Thomas turned out to be an older man with salt and pepper hair and tired eyes, dressed in a well-worn suit. He recognized me immediately. "You look like your grandmother," he said, his expression softening. Elaine was a remarkable woman. One of the smartest business minds I ever encountered, though few knew it. Over coffee, Thomas revealed he had been my grandfather junior partner in the early days of the real estate business. "Your father worked with us too, before his problems overwhelmed him," he explained. James had potential, but he could not resist shortcuts. When I asked why he had contacted me now, his expression darkened. "I have been following the situation with your inheritance. Your aunt and uncle are not just greedy, they are dangerous." He leaned forward. "Oh, yesterday, Eleanor contacted me asking if I would testify that your grandfather was mentally declining and that your father had been promised a third of the business." I was shocked. "Would you have done that?" Thomas shook his head firmly. "Absolutely not." Harold was sharp as a tack until the end. But what concerned me was what else Eleanor said. She mentioned they were planning to take more direct action, since legal channels were moving too slowly. He slid a folder across the table. "What your family may not realize is that I kept records of everything over the years. This includes evidence of your uncle's attempted embezzlement, which your grandfather covered up. There are also records of threats your aunt made against your grandparents when they refused a loan 3 years ago." Alexander, who had been silently observing, spoke up. "Do you believe they are planning something imminent?" Thomas nodded grimly. "Eleanor mentioned something about taking possession of what is rightfully theirs this weekend. I believe they are planning to physically occupy the villa and try to force Beulah out." This information sent me into high alert. Back at the villa, Alexander immediately enhanced security measures and positioned his team strategically around the property. Mr. Blackwood arranged for a detective from the Financial Crimes Unit, Detective Laura Martinez, to review the evidence Thomas had provided. "Your relatives have engaged in multiple illegal activities," Detective Martinez confirmed after examining the documents. "The threats, harassment, and previous embezzlement create a pattern that we can use to pursue charges." As we developed a strategy, Mr. Blackwood made a suggestion that initially shocked me. "Let them come," he said. "With proper preparation and witnesses, we can end this once and for all." The plan came together quickly. Thomas agreed to be present with his documentation. Detective Martinez would be there in an unofficial capacity gathering evidence. Alexander's security team would be positioned throughout the property but initially out of sight. And Mr. Blackwood added one final element, a videographer who would document everything. "Let them show their true colors on camera," he advised. "Sometimes the court of public opinion is as powerful as a court of law." We received confirmation of their plans through an unexpected channel. Cousin Tyler, apparently having second thoughts, sent a warning text. "They are coming Saturday at noon. Bringing lawyers. Planning to stay until you leave. Not my idea. Be careful." Saturday morning, I felt strangely calm as final preparations were made. The security cameras were checked, recording devices placed in key locations, and everyone took their positions. Thomas, Detective Martinez, and Mr. Blackwood sat with me in the living room, visible from the front entrance, but not from outside. The videographer, Daniel, positioned himself discreetly to capture everything. Alexander and his team maintained communication through earpieces, ready to intervene if necessary. At precisely 12:15, 3 vehicles pulled up to the villa gates. Security camera feeds showed Aunt Eleanor, Uncle Franklin, and cousins Cassandra and Tyler, accompanied by attorney Judith Sterling and 2 men I did not recognize carrying duffel bags. "They are demanding entry, sir," one of Alexander's team reported through the communication system, "claiming they are family and have a right to be here." "Let them in," Alexander instructed. "But log their names and record everything." The gates swung open and the group approached the main entrance. From my position, I could hear Aunt Eleanor's shrill voice through the door. "Remember the plan. We occupy the house, force her to negotiate. Possession is 9/10 of the law." When they rang the doorbell, Alexander personally answered, dressed in a suit that gave no indication of his security role. My relatives pushed past him into the grand foyer, stopping short when they saw me sitting calmly in the living room, flanked by 3 people they did not expect. "What is this?" Uncle Franklin demanded, his face flushing. "Who are these people?" I stood, finding strength I did not know I possessed. "These are my advisors and witnesses," I said calmly. "I understand you have come to take possession of my home." Aunt Eleanor faltered slightly before recovering. "This is a family matter, Beulah. We need to discuss the unfair distribution of family assets in private." Judith Sterling stepped forward. "All business. My clients have legitimate claims to portions of the Matthews estate. We are prepared to occupy this property until a fair settlement is reached." Mr. Blackwood rose, introducing himself. "The will is ironclad, as you have been informed multiple times. This attempted occupation constitutes criminal trespass and harassment." Uncle Franklin's face contorted with rage. He gestured to the two unknown men who moved toward their duffel bags. "We are not leaving. This house belongs to the Matthews family, not just this entitled little girl who manipulated her way into the entire fortune." That was when Thomas stepped forward, and I saw recognition dawn on my relatives' faces. "Thomas, what are you doing here?" Aunt Eleanor's voice had a tremor now. "Providing evidence," Thomas replied calmly, holding up his folder. "Evidence of your attempted embezzlement, Franklin. Evidence of your threats against Harold and Elaine Eleanor. Evidence that you have been planning this confrontation for weeks." Detective Martinez chose that moment to reveal her badge. "I am Detective Martinez, Financial Crimes Division. While I am here unofficially today, I find the evidence Mr. Reynolds has provided extremely compelling, enough to open a formal investigation." The color drained from my relatives' faces as they realized the trap they had walked into. Then Daniel, the videographer, stepped into view with his camera clearly recording. The impact was immediate. Uncle Franklin lunged toward Daniel, shouting, "Turn that off," before Alexander and his team emerged from their positions, forming a protective barrier. What followed was chaos. Aunt Eleanor screamed accusations about manipulation and betrayal. Uncle Franklin threatened lawsuits against everyone present. Cousin Cassandra began crying dramatically, while Tyler backed toward the door, clearly wanting no further part in the confrontation. "You set us up," Aunt Eleanor hissed at me, her carefully maintained facade crumbling into naked hatred. "You are just like your father, manipulative, selfish." I remained calm. "No, I have simply protected what my grandparents legally left to me. They made their choice after years of watching how you treated them and each other. I did not steal anything, I did not manipulate anyone. I loved them for who they were, not what they owned." The two unknown men, now identified by Alexander's team as hired intimidators with criminal records, attempted to leave but were detained by security until police arrived to formally respond to the trespassing complaint. As uniformed officers led my relatives and their associates from the property, Aunt Eleanor turned back for one final shot. "This is not over, Beulah. Family does not give up on what belongs to them." Detective Martinez stepped forward. "Actually, Mrs. Parker, I recommend you do exactly that. The evidence we have gathered today, combined with Mr. Reynolds' documentation, gives us grounds for multiple criminal charges: harassment, conspiracy, attempted extortion, and possibly fraud. I suggest you contact a criminal defense attorney immediately." When the police cars finally pulled away, the villa fell into a strange silence. I stood in the grand foyer, surrounded by my unexpected allies, feeling a complex mixture of vindication, sadness, and relief. The confrontation had been ugly but necessary. "Your grandparents would be proud," Thomas said quietly, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You stood your ground with dignity, just as they would have done." For the first time since inheriting the fortune, I felt worthy of it. Not because I had won against my greedy relatives, but because I had protected what my grandparents had built and the legacy they had chosen to entrust to me. The days following the confrontation brought a whirlwind of legal activity and unexpected developments. Detective Martinez officially opened an investigation into my relatives' actions, focusing on the harassment threats and evidence of past financial crimes against my grandparents. My relatives initially hired aggressive attorneys who threatened counteractions, claiming entrapment and defamation. However, when presented with the video evidence and Thomas documentation, their legal strategy quickly shifted to damage control. Most surprising was a call from my aunt and uncle, former lawyer Judith Sterling. She requested a meeting, arriving at the villa looking considerably less confident than during the confrontation. "I want to apologize for my involvement," she said, refusing to sit down as if she did not deserve the comfort. "Your relatives misrepresented the situation to me. They claimed your grandparents had promised them portions of the estate verbally, and that you had manipulated changes to the will." She handed me a folder containing communications between her and my relatives. "I am withdrawing from their representation and have provided these to Detective Martinez as well. Attorney-client privilege does not extend to planning future crimes, which is what they were clearly doing." Her revelation that my relatives had planned to forge documents claiming partial ownership of the properties stunned even Mr. Blackwood. "This crosses from civil into criminal territory," he observed after she left. "They could face serious charges." 3 days after the confrontation, I received an unexpected letter from cousin Tyler, delivered by courier rather than mail. "Beulah, I am sorry for my part in this ugly situation. I was pressured by my parents, but that is no excuse. I should have had the courage to stand up to them sooner. I do not expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I have provided Detective Martinez with texts and emails showing how this scheme developed. Tyler." His cooperation provided the final evidence needed for the district attorney to file formal charges against Aunt Eleanor and Uncle Franklin for conspiracy, attempted extortion, and fraud. The family drama took another turn when a journalist who had been following the story managed to locate my father, James Matthews, in a small town in Arizona. His story appeared in the Sunday edition, "Estranged Father of Heiress Responds to Family Inheritance Battle." According to the article, my father had been sober for 3 years, working as a carpenter and living a quiet life. He expressed shock at his parents' wealth, but supported their decision to leave everything to me. "I failed as a father," he was quoted saying. "I do not deserve any part of their legacy. Beulah was raised by them, loved by them. The inheritance belongs to her alone." The journalist included contact information from my father with a note that he wanted to reach out but would respect my wishes either way. I placed the article in a drawer, not yet ready to decide whether to open that door from my past. As legal proceedings against my relatives, advanced media attention intensified. Reporters camped outside the villa gates, and my story appeared on local and then national news. The narrative varied from sympathetic accounts of family betrayal to sensationalized tales of the inheritance battle. The unwanted fame made simple tasks like grocery shopping impossible. People recognized me, approached for photos or comments, or simply stared. Some were supportive, others judgmental. The loss of privacy was yet another unexpected consequence of wealth. My teaching career also hung in limbo. Though the principal expressed support after the truth emerged, returning to the classroom seemed impossible with my new public profile. The children and their parents would see me differently now. The simple joy of teaching art might be forever changed by the knowledge of my wealth. In the midst of this tumult, Monica remained my anchor, visiting daily and helping me navigate the strange new reality. She had taken a leave from nursing to support me, and I was grateful for her unwavering friendship. My solace came in an unexpected discovery. While organizing my grandparents' personal effects, I found a sealed envelope addressed to me and my grandmother, elegant handwriting dated just 2 weeks before their fatal trip. "Dearest Beulah, if you are reading this, then our plan to share our secret with you has been delayed or prevented. We have arranged for this letter to be given to you if anything happens to us before we can tell you everything ourselves. The wealth we have accumulated was never as important to us as you have been. We built our business and investments hoping to create security for future generations. But we recognized the dangers of unearned privilege. We wanted you to develop your own identity, values, and strength of character before burdening you with significant wealth. We have watched you grow into a compassionate, hardworking young woman who finds joy in teaching children rather than accumulating possessions. These qualities, not our financial success, represent our true legacy. We have chosen you as our heir, not simply because you are our grandchild, but because you have demonstrated wisdom, kindness, and integrity throughout your life. These are the qualities needed to manage wealth responsibly. The decision to exclude other family members was made after years of witnessing their choices. They have shown repeatedly that they value money over relationships, status over substance. We tried many times to guide them toward better values, but they chose different paths. Trust Samuel to guide you through the transition. And remember that this wealth is a tool, not a measure of your worth. Use it to create the life you want and to make a difference in ways that matter to you. Know that we are proud of you not for what you will own, but for who you are. With all our love, Grandma Elaine and Grandpa Harold. The letter brought both tears and clarity. For the first time since the inheritance, I felt I understood their intentions and the responsibility they had entrusted to me. This was not just about money, but about values and purpose. With this renewed perspective, I began making decisions about my future. I would need financial advisors, yes, but also guidance on philanthropy and meaningful investment. The wealth could be a burden or an opportunity depending on how I chose to view it. As for my relatives, I instructed Mr. Blackwood to pursue justice through legal channels but not vengeance. If they faced consequences for their actions, it would be through proper legal processes, not from my desire for retribution. The coming months would bring challenges as the legal cases proceeded, and I adjusted to my new reality. But for the first time since receiving the shocking news of my inheritance, I felt equal to the task. My grandparents had prepared me better than I had realized, not through financial education but by instilling values that money could neither create nor corrupt. 6 months after the dramatic confrontation at the villa, my life had transformed in ways I could never have imagined. The lakeside property now felt like home, though I had redecorated several rooms to reflect my personal style rather than the impersonal luxury it had initially conveyed. Photos of my grandparents adorn the walls along with my own artwork and pieces created by my former students. The adjustment to wealth had not been easy. The first time I purchased something expensive, a new car, to replace my vandalized Honda, I felt overwhelming guilt. Was this what my grandparents wanted? Would they approve of such spending? Monica had accompanied me to the dealership, talking me through the anxiety. "You are not buying a Ferrari Beulah," she had pointed out reasonably. "You are buying a safe, reliable vehicle. Your grandparents would want you to be secure." Finding the balance between enjoying the privileges of wealth and maintaining the values my grandparents had instilled was an ongoing process. Some days I succeeded, others I questioned every decision. The legal consequences for my relatives had been significant. Aunt Eleanor and Uncle Franklin had eventually accepted plea deals, avoiding jail time, but receiving probation, community service, and substantial fines. More painfully for them, the publicity had damaged their social standing and business connections. Cousin Cassandra had moved to Chicago, starting fresh, where her family notoriety was unknown. Tyler had made a more positive change, entering therapy and pursuing education in social work, occasionally sending me updates on his progress. The most meaningful development had been establishing the Harold and Elaine Matthews Foundation, dedicated to providing art education to underserved communities. The foundation funded programs in schools with limited resources, offering the same opportunities that had shaped my own love of art. Setting up the foundation had given purpose to the inheritance, transforming it from a burden into a legacy that honored my grandparents' values. The first time I visited a classroom benefiting from the foundation grants, watching children discover the joy of creation, I felt my grandparents' presence strongly, as if they were witnessing their true legacy taking shape. My personal life had gradually found new balance as well. After careful consideration, I had responded to my father's contact information, agreeing to meet at a neutral location. Our reunion had been awkward, painful, and ultimately healing. James Matthews was a changed man, humbled by his failures and working daily to maintain his sobriety. We were building a cautious relationship, not as father and daughter in the traditional sense, but as two adults with a complicated shared history. I had not offered him money, and to his credit, he had not asked for any. Instead, I had eventually established a modest trust that would support his continued recovery while protecting him from his former addictive tendencies. It was what my grandparents would have done, balancing compassion with wisdom. Perhaps the most surprising development had been my friendship with Thomas Reynolds, my father, former business partner. Thomas had become a mentor, helping me understand the business empire my grandparents had built and guiding me through decisions about properties and investments. His stories about my grandparents' early days in business gave me insights into parts of their lives I had never known. They were visionaries, Thomas explained during one of our regular lunch meetings. They saw potential in properties and neighborhoods others overlooked. But what made them truly successful was how they treated people. They never exploited, never took advantage. They created win-win situations that built loyalty and trust. This approach became my model as I learned to manage the inheritance. I established fair leasing practices for the commercial properties, invested in companies with ethical business models, and ensured that wealth generated more than just additional wealth. My identity as a teacher remained important to me, though I had not returned to the classroom. Instead, I taught art workshops through the foundation and mentored promising young artists from disadvantaged backgrounds. It was teaching with greater impact, reaching students who might otherwise never have access to artistic opportunities. As for my friendship with Monica, it had evolved in unexpected ways. Her unwavering support throughout the ordeal had strengthened our bond, and she had eventually accepted my offer to become the Foundation Executive Director, applying her organizational skills and compassionate nature to our growing initiatives. She remained my most trusted confidant, the person who still treated me exactly the same as before the inheritance. The journey had taught me lessons I never expected to learn about family wealth and my own capacity for resilience. Family, I discovered, was not defined by blood or legal documents, but by love, respect, and mutual support. My grandparents, Monica Thomas, and even Grace, the housekeeper, were more truly family than those who shared my surname. Wealth, I learned, was neutral, neither inherently good nor evil. Its value depended entirely on how it was used, the intentions behind its deployment, and the wisdom guiding its management. Money could build or destroy, connect or isolate depending on the choices of those who controlled it. Most importantly, I discovered my own strength. The frightened, overwhelmed teacher who had first heard the words $39 million had grown into a woman capable of standing her ground, making difficult decisions and using resources wisely. My grandparents had seen this potential in me even before I recognized it in myself. On the anniversary of my grandparents' death, I held a small private memorial at the villa. Monica Thomas, Grace, and Mr. Blackwood joined me on the lakeside deck as the sun set, sharing memories and raising glasses in tribute to Harold and Elaine Matthews. "They built more than wealth," I said as we watched the golden light fade from the water. "They built character, relationships, and a legacy of kindness. That is what I hope to continue. And fur of lan. There, as, n. Later, alone on the deck, I reflected on the extraordinary year behind me. The inheritance that had seemed at first like a curse had become a blessing, not because of the money itself, but because of the growth it had demanded of me. I still missed my grandparents every day. I still questioned whether I was making choices they would approve. But I had come to understand that their greatest gift had not been the $39 million. It had been their belief in me, their investment in my character, and their trust that I would find my way. What would you do if you suddenly inherited millions? Would you keep it a secret like my grandparents did? Or would you share your good fortune? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. And remember, in a world where people often show their worst over money, choose to be someone who proves that character and kindness are the true measure of wealth. Thank you for listening to my story.